Hello everyone, and welcome back or welcome to my Medieval 100 Baby Challenge. Just in case you're new here, after losing my Ultimate Decades Challenge when I got a new PC, I wasn't quite ready to start again, but I knew eventually I'd want to play it, so why not populate it by doing another challenge in the meantime. I should also give the heads up that there are some trigger warnings to be mindful of, and that maybe this isn't the series for you. If you're not new here, everything will be more of a recap for you, since I didn't want to start my new style of content in the middle of a challenge. And who knows, maybe you guys will enjoy a trip down memory lane. Anyways, we're starting off the challenge with Nora Baker and her cat Tibbert. She is a teen, so she only has two traits to start with, romantic and loves the outdoors. She also had the happy to have a child trait from Lumpino's Romance and Pregnancy overhaul. And lastly, she started with the cooking aspiration, hence the essence of flavor. But since she can't get a job, I had to change her to the serial romantic aspiration, giving her the alluring trait as well. When I started the challenge, I hadn't gotten a chance to play with Love Struck, Life and Death, or the Home Chef Hustle packs, so I really tried to incorporate what I could from those packs on day one. So Nora purchased a handful of chickens, and they'll be super important since I banned myself from using the gruel from the medieval cookbook, as it takes no resources to make. And the chickens will provide us with eggs that are literally liquid gold throughout the entire challenge. With her last name being Baker, I really loved the idea of her selling goods in order to provide for her babies, so she was going to need some goats. With all of the animals on this tiny cottage lot, it put together this Snow White vibe for her, so I named her goats Grumpy and Sleepy. Similar to the Ultimate Decades Challenge, Nora isn't allowed to store any food in the fridge, since it makes no sense for the time, so whatever excess she ends up with had to be made into food or sold before it spoiled. And lastly, I did initially use the mod to allow for more difficulty in gardening, but I didn't know how anti-LGBT the creator was at the time of using it. So while I don't recommend using their mods today, you'll still see its effect on my garden for quite a while, and for that I do apologize, as it could definitely be hurtful to some of you, and I cannot stress enough how much I don't agree with them. Lastly, all my master lists are on my blog in the description below. I do recommend at least checking out the rules, as they're enforced across all my social media, and that pretty much covers all the basics. So feel free to leave name suggestions in the comments, as this challenge is still ongoing and I have like 57 babies to name still. With getting pregnant being the goal, I had Nora head to the town square where I had a group of teens gather. I had her start dancing with Amari, but in true Sims 4 fashion, I looked away for 2 seconds and the man was gone. So I started chatting up Jeremiah just to find Amari right behind him. But too bad, because I already asked Jeremiah to go on a date in order to start working on our aspiration, which is where I immediately got wrecked by the Love Struck pack, because every couple wanted to hog all the seats. Nora and Jeremiah did manage to snag a spot, fortunately, just for her to become hysterical 5 seconds later. At least I remembered to put a mirror on the lot, and she was able to calm down and get back to her date, which is where I got to see the magnificent, seductive dance in all its glory, leading into their first kiss and them gaining the steamy dynamic before jumping into bed together. And Nora did end up pregnant, making Jeremiah the first donor. Before ending their date, she had to ask Jeremiah to be her partner, and fortunately he did say yes, which left her just needing to go on a second date to finish the first step of the serial romantic aspiration. I had Nora return to the town square where she could tend to her needs, but more importantly so she could harvest the mushrooms the following morning before returning home. Since she was starving, I had to have her eat a few of the mushrooms to survive, while planting half in the garden and storing the rest, which proved to be really annoying because she got nature's revenge from eating harvestables with the off-the-grid trait, on top of already being pregnant. At least Tibbert was having a good time on top of the fridge, and Nora was able to make it to the bathroom in time. Oh, and I taught Tibbert not to jump on the counters right as he was jumping up, which was hilarious. She also got to make her first proper meal, pottage, which isn't that exciting, sure, but it was definitely an accomplishment for us. And while the goats were milked, this was around the time the medieval cookbook changed dramatically, so I couldn't figure out how to make cheese yet. Even worse, I decided I was only going to feed Tibbert human food because kibble was lame to me, so now the food situation will be even more of an issue in the house. But with the excess ingredients we had, I did get to start the first yard sale, and I chose not to mark anything up to make things more difficult for myself. At least you can meet people while working, because so far Snow White over here really only knew animals. With everything sold, I decided to send her foraging, and I tried to take Tibbert along, but he got left behind, which I guess makes sense given his lack of opposable thumbs, where she reached level 2 in the foraging, giving her the ability to make the forager's basket, which required what to make, and since I couldn't figure that out either, I just had to have of her forage for more items until I did get myself together eventually and get the wood to make our first basket. I also sent her fishing with the mod to try it out, and while she did bring home an impressive haul, there wasn't anything she could make with the fish, so I had her start a second yard sale. Where Sim tried to ask if I had heard of the Hemford locals before, like Agatha wasn't standing right behind her. And since Honora could only harvest the last 3 days of the season, and my seasons were 14 days long, I did spend a lot of time foraging for food. Pottage was really the only thing we were consistently making to avoid nature's revenge, but man did it take a lot of vegetables to make. In the middle of this, I decided to have her mine for crystals in hopes of also making a little extra money since it would be hard to do anything once the baby arrived. But this turned out to be a terrible idea as her needs tanked super fast. At least she got a cool sword and a couple of spears worth a lot of money, but I couldn't really be happy about that because there was a problem with Honora's pregnancy and she ended up having a miscarriage due to her poor needs. So I named her little girl Adelaide and placed her gravestone in the yard. No more strenuous activities like mining for gems while pregnant. But I have some good news, I guess, because Honora flew into a rage and perished before I could calm her down, and I had last saved right before we harvested the mushrooms at the town square. And while I did plan to play the day again and meet back up with you guys, Honora started a fire, stressing me and the cat out. Not to mention the stove was now garbage and she was too poor to replace it. Broken hungry again, I tried to pivot to making money by going foraging, but she was too uncomfortable from being pregnant. So instead of doing anything useful for her survival, she decided to unwind in bed. At least she had some bee boxes to live off of honey and avoid nature's revenge. I had her go fishing in order to have some extra items to sell off, which left her just shy of the 1500 she needed to fix her stove. Oh yeah, and if you guys didn't know, you can click on the little icons or buttons next to their needs and your Sims will take care of them. Super helpful and not all that well known in the community. Anyways, I had her go fishing and do the yard sale again, which did earn enough money to replace the stove, but now there were no resources and Tibbert was starving. So instead of replacing the stove, I had to get a fire pit that Honora could use to cook up some fish for her poor cat. Maybe it's better to just cook up fish for now, though, and save our money because holy heck I was fighting for my life. But too bad, because Tibbert wasn't eating and Honora couldn't give him a taste of her food, so now I had a new stove and fire pit with 3 simoleons left over. To be fair though, my cat was worth every penny and I finally got him to eat. So, one crisis averted and right into another because my goats decided to throw a fit in a thunderstorm due to inadequate care. So instead of getting a good night's sleep, Honora was up and tending to her goats. But I learned she could still forage in a thunderstorm at least and giving us more stuff to sell, but the storm was raging outside, preventing us from making any money to buy food for the goats. So while Honora and all her animals were helpless in the house, I brought over Amari and decided to work on some of her whims in the meantime, since we were about to be in our 3rd trimester soon, and Honora immediately got a crush on Amari. But like, can you blame the girl? Look at him. But of course, nothing can go right for me, and Jeremiah decided to invite himself over as well. So Amari had to go before she could be caught cheating. At least since she couldn't afford a broom, she could ask the dust bunnies to find valuables and check her dirty laundry for pocket change, finally getting us enough money to feed the goats. And since it was still storming the next morning, she spent some time befriending the dust bunny so it could find better valuables in between Honora's trips to the forest. With some fish and items from the bees accumulated, Honora was able to start another yard sale where I learned the storm trashed one of her bee boxes. She unfortunately wasn't able to sell much either since her needs were tanking fast and I wanted to avoid another miscarriage. So she had to start back up in the morning, and while she did sell most of the items, she still had to stop early and even remove some of the items to tend to her needs again. But at least the house was so disgusting that another dust bunny appeared and could also start looking for valuables. And just like that, all the money was gone because the lightning struck my clothesline and I had to prioritize Honora's comfort over replacing our bee box. So, with the baby about to be here any moment, I had her spend some time tidying up the best she could, just for her to break the sink when I was finished, which she was repairing until she went into labor and Adelaide was here. And if you don't know, during childbirth and each life stage, they'll have to face a D&D style role to survive, with Honora needing to avoid 1 and Adelaide 5, 10, 15, and 20, which both girls fortunately did survive, and I really needed this one because I had been fighting for my life the whole pregnancy to keep Honora happy while also keeping the house together. However, the finances in the thunderstorm were still horrific the next morning, so I thought Honora could try knitting in order to make some money, but she still had to break the elements and at least tend to her bees because that was the only way I had enough food for both her and Tibbert. And with Adelaide now here, Honora was going to be even more demanding since she had to breastfeed as well. So she and I spent a lot of time going back and forth to make sure no one starved for the day. I also hadn't been collecting the eggs yet, since they don't spoil if you leave them in the coop. So we did get 7 normal eggs and 1 hatchable egg as well. The eggs fortunately could be made into a family serving of boiled eggs, which were surprisingly shelf stable and would solve our food crisis for quite a while. Also, the dust bunnies were starting to revolt, giving us a dusty onion and simply just not finding anything. Which, like, please, she can barely keep the house together, don't add more problems. Whatever though, Honora was a total beast, and at least is keeping everyone happy enough, so much so that I was finally able to invite over Amari again. Unfortunately, since we had him over previously, it didn't take long for the two to decide to do the deed together, while apparently Sleepy decided to be a creep and watch the two. But unfortunately, Honora was still without child, and Amari wasn't down for round 3. So he had to go, and Honora had to get to work, where I decided to sell a few servings of the boiled eggs. Of course, it took -2 seconds for a thunderstorm to start, ending the yard sale, and Tipper, despite being very hungry, was refusing to eat the pottage I had left out for him. With the rain, there wasn't much to do besides knit, and even that wasn't working right, so I had to take an L on the money and send Honora to bed. The next morning, we had several broken water collectors and another opportunity to hopefully get pregnant with Amari, but I can't seem to catch a break, and the guy was uselessly wandering around the neighborhood, preventing me from inviting him over. I swear the game had it out for me at this point too, because the weather was finally better and I went to start a yard sale and just to discover the table had been fried and there was no money to replace it. Oh well, one problem at a time, starting with the starving cat and trying to please my dust bunnies. At least we had the goats and bee box to earn money from, and since you can just sell directly from them, I decided it was good enough in hopes of getting the household back on track. All of which got us a whopping 182 simoleons and got us pretty close to a new bee box. I also remembered that Honora could befriend the bees in order to get gifts from them, so I had her bond with them for a while until I got the notification that it was Adelaide's birthday, where she became a cautious infant, and after a quick makeover, it was time for her role. She needed to avoid 8, 12, and 16, which she did, thank goodness. Now that she was an infant, she would have to get 10 milestones in order to become a toddler, so Adelaide spent some time playing with her toys while Nora continued to tend to things around the house. And finally, this is where we got enough money to replace the second bee box. Oh my god, this felt like such an accomplishment after all the work Nora had put in over the last few days. So naturally, I had her start working on bonding with the second box so she could get another gift. And Adelaide got another milestone, bringing her up to 3 so far. By the way, I was literally struggling so bad at this point that I was hoping Adelaide would have a blowout so I could give her a bubble bath and quickly knock out 3 more milestones. With the house together and Honora's needs improved, I was finally able to get Amari over again, where we got our first bills for 222 simoleons and failed to get pregnant again. But finally on the 4th try, Honora was pregnant, but we were so broke, so right back to work she went, with the bees carrying us, and they got us enough to pay our bills. Adelaide also got her 4th milestone right before Jeremiah showed up, which was perfect because Nora had a whim to woohoo together. And literally as soon as the two were done, Amari was on her mind because her whim centered around him. At least Adelaide was focused and got her 5th milestone without any help from Nora and the coveted blowout, which gave her 8 milestones in total after a bubble bath. I also felt like I was finally getting into a rhythm with managing everything, so I got the prairie grass, which does add another chore for Nora, but it also saves us money on feeding the goats and can give cool items. While Nora was harvesting the grass, our egg hatched and we got another hen, so they'll hopefully have more and more chickens over time. Adelaide also got the coo milestone around this time, so Nora finally helped her baby with some tummy time and getting her the last milestone we needed to age up. I also decided I had to make the cake to age them up since managing resources was a huge part of this challenge. With no way to make it through the medieval cookbook, I had to wait until I had enough power to make an in-game cake, and literally right as Nora finished, the power went out again. At least we could afford the birthday candles, and Adelaide became a fussy toddler. After her makeover, it was time to roll again, needing to avoid 4, 8, and 12, which she did. The girls were both pretty beat, so I had to wait until morning, where Nora learned she was pregnant and quickly got to work, doing more or less what she had been doing for the past sim week now, while Adelaide was working on getting all of her skills to level 3. I really wanted Adelaide to be a child before the second baby was here, because there was no way Nora could keep doing everything by herself. At least there was enough money to replace the yard sale table today, leaving us with 12 simoleons, allowing for Adelaide to finally be able to keep up with her mom and improve her thinking skill by watching her. Also, Adelaide's grandfather Cedric was at the yard sale table, so I had them interact a little, but apparently she decided to be a pint-sized jerk and kicked her grandfather in the shin. And no, she was not sorry about it in the slightest. Oh well, at least Honora could finally afford a broom and clean up the house a little bit. The next morning, Honora woke up hysterical, so right back to bed she went, leaving Adelaide a little bit helpless and having to snag Tibert's breakfast. At least she saved some for him and the two shared it. Glad they can problem solve, cause my clothesline was broken by the time Honora woke up, and she was simply just too busy to look after them. Fortunately, Jeremiah did show up, and I decided he was going to be an active father and help Adelaide with some of her skills, while Honora was hard at work. It was also time to harvest the garden, and I was so stoked to not have to forage for every meal anymore, giving her some more time to start a yard sale. But our luck wasn't quite improved, because sometime at night, Grumpy ran away due to inadequate care. At least the bee boxes were providing us with enough items to start another yard sale, which Jeremiah showed up for and was promptly meal kicked by his mini-me. At least he could give her the bath she had been asking Honora for all morning, allowing her to stay focused on the yard sale and eventually even replace the clothesline again. She also needed to tend to the animals, as both Sleepy and the chickens were pretty upset, and Grumpy did eventually return home right before Adelaide got to level 3 in all of her skills. So it was time to age her up, where she gained the kleptomaniac trait, and after a quick makeover, she avoided 9 and 19, surviving her role. And she did suffer the firstborn curse by being immediately sent fishing. Sorry baby, but Mama was struggling, but her hard work did pay off, and she was able to afford a nice bed finally. And while pregnant with Amari's child, she decided to be paranoid about Jeremiah cheating on her. A guilty conscience is a heck of a thing, I guess. Also, with none of my Sims going to school, I had decided on needing to complete aspirations to the best of our ability and paying $10,000 if we failed to complete them in order to age up the children and teens. And Adelaide was breezing through the social butterfly like it was nothing thanks to the yard sale. Even better, Honora finally had plenty of time to get to know Jameson thanks to Adelaide's help. But I did need to have her make more foraging baskets, as neither of the girls seemed to have one anymore. And while Tibbert was refusing to eat anything, I was at least able to feed him treats, and that was enough to keep him happy. Honora even got to go fishing, which had been a whim of hers for a long time, and while she sucked at it, she at least got to collect some items on the way back home. And the next day, Honora finally got to go on a date with Jameson, which did complete the first step of the serial romantic aspiration, and fortunately, I didn't have to fight with every couple ever to sit down and talk to him. But I did notice Xavier Lucera was cheating on his wife in the background, which genuinely made me want to fight him since he's supposed to be insanely loyal to his wife. At least this isn't my Ultimate Decades challenge yet, cause I would probably cry. Even better is Honora wanted to talk with Jeremiah about her fears of being cheated on while on a date with Jameson. And with a kiss, we knocked both the date and Mayday out of the park, before going into labor as Honora was walking home. And again, we had a girl named Iris, but it was time for the rules, with Honora needing to avoid 1 and Iris 5, 10, 15, and 20. Thankfully, both of the girls were fine, so Honora was able to meet up with Jameson in the nearby woods for their first kiss. Apparently the mistletoe kiss I did earlier didn't count, and a little more, which did get her pregnant. And just across the river was Jeremiah, so she finally got to talk with him about her fear of him cheating, which did help her feel better, so she went to chat it up with her crush Omari, where we were finally caught by Jeremiah and literally nothing happened. I was actually super disappointed that all we got was a wall of text and he walked by without even so much as looking hurt. I can't help but criticize the game here, as that's just downright lame. Whatever though, at least I figured out that knitting was bugged in the game and got a mod to fix it, so Honora was able to resume all the projects she had started in the past, and Adelaide was still crushing it at the selling table. And since I had figured out how to make ingredients for the medieval cookbook at this point, Honora was also able to finally make some food to sell as well. And finally, with some true downtime, Adelaide got to finally enjoy knitting for some motor skill in hopes of helping with the garden come summer. The next day, Adelaide reached level 5, so to finish up her aspiration, she needed to make a best friend, and I thought why not start a club for her. But I quickly got overwhelmed by having 6 kids on my lot, so I sent them all foraging to preserve my sanity, and while they were gone, I got a notification that I could age up Iris. She was a cautious infant, and after a quick makeover, she needed to avoid 8, 12, and 16, which she did, thank goodness. I was actually really enjoying how smooth the game was going at this point, and played through to Iris being a child, just for the game to have a bug at the time where kids looked super pregnant and bizarre. And while I did have a backup from when Iris became an infant, it took a hot minute for me to care enough to return to the game. But once I did, I was finally able to get Tibbert to stop playing in the chicken feed and decided to remove off the grid because I felt like it was horribly balanced and just sucking the enjoyment out of the game. At least Honora could get a reduction in bills from the items we had on the lot, and that was good enough for me. And with that, I sent Adelaide to the town square with with the gang in hopes of making one of the kids become her best friend, which really didn't take long because Bastion was pretty close to her already, and she unlocked the final step, where she needed to befriend an adult. With her being pretty close to her grandma, I sent her over to her dad's house, where, surprise, Beatrice was not around, and her dad was just nude while chilling with her grandpa. I guess Adelaide decided to join in on the chaos and started making a mess in the house, and after a long time, Grandma finally returned home, where the two became jokesters, and I learned that the children can cloud gaze with adults. Once the two were friends, I sent Adelaide home and went fishing since I wanted to expand the house and would need way more simoleons than the household had. Once Adelaide was back, I realized she wasn't close to her mom and had them bond a little, getting the supportive dynamic. Now all she had to do to age up was befriend 3 children, and thank goodness, because I knew once Honora gave birth that I was going to need another teen to help out with childcare. But since it was late, I had Honora start a yard sale as our food was going to spoil, and Adelaide spent the night knitting, leading us into summer, where I realized I had basically nothing to plant, so Adelaide would have to get to foraging. I had also removed Death by Laughter from my game because Honora had spent about 2 sim days at this point, becoming hysterical nonstop, and I was just sick of the horrible emotion system at this point. And since Honora was finally free from the curse of the giggles, she was actually able to get ingredients from the animals and start cooking up a storm. And with a bunch of the food ready to go, Honora took Iris out for a walk, which she hated by the way, since she had the hates being held quirk. But like, too bad, because Jeremiah was nearby and I wanted them to work on their relationship. This was the first time I was playing with wimps on, and so I had never gotten a sim to get over their fear yet. And I guess Iris was serious about not being held because she was hilariously glitching in and out of the back carrier the whole time while screaming. Adelaide had also found a ton of vegetables for the season, but I decided to wait on planting them as it was definitely a struggle to keep up with the garden in spring. So it left her day free to start a yard sale, and man had Honora been busy stocking that table to the brim. Also, The Sims 4 is truly a perfect game and there are no flaws whatsoever. And there was some bad news. Our hens were starting to become elders and I hadn't gotten any hatchable eggs in forever. Oh yeah, and then my game crashed, so basically all of that was lost, but outside of Honora getting the secret spice mastery perk and a new fear of being alone, not much else changed. I did also decide to get a pet bowl again, since I felt terrible about Tibbert constantly starving, despite having food on the floor for him 24/7. And with one of our hens finally passing on, I decided to buy 2 hens and a rooster, which was such a financial blow while also trying to save up for a house expansion. I definitely cried a little inside, but Iris was at least ready to age up, so Honora had to check the coop for eggs to make a cake when Tibbert learned to stop scratching what little furniture we had. There also wasn't enough eggs in the coop, so I sent Adelaide foraging in hopes of her finding some for us, while deciding that instead of saving up for a house expansion, I wanted to save up 10,000 simoleons for the lot trait to increase the chance of twins and triplets. Jeremiah also showed up and I was able to have them work on their relationship some more, and of course, she had a whim to chat with Amari at the same time. And while Adelaide spent all day foraging for eggs without any luck, there was finally some eggs in the coop again, and Iris got to age up into an inquisitive toddler. And she of course had to avoid 8, 12, and 16, which she did, and I was happy she did because look at her, she's adorable. And naturally, she had to make my life more difficult by immediately becoming a picky eater, but at least Honora lost her fears, which I am pretty sure was through a glitch and not by me working through them, but I mean I needed a win so bad guys, so whatever. After planting a few things in the garden for Iris's social skill, Honora invited over Julian and I immediately had him feel for our baby, as like, he should know that we mean business and he's next in line, which maybe was a bad idea because he got annoyed with us 5 seconds later, and shortly after that, Honora went into labor, giving birth to our first boy William, who was named by Higgledy 230. And even cooler is both survived their roles, allowing Honora to get right back into flirting with Julian. Also, Jameson showed up a day late and $1 short, freaking out about William's birth. A side note, Iris was also super upset about William's existence, but who cares, because before Julian was able to leave, I managed to sneak in a first kiss and a woohoo that got Honora pregnant. So he was free to leave, and Honora quickly found a potato nectar, so I got the nectar rack to improve the quality, followed by me buying a rabbit for Adelaide that I named Patters. I also spent some time making an aesthetic TikTok, so by the time I started recording for YouTube again, William was an infant, and I of course didn't record his dice roll or even what his trait was. Listen, this was like my 5th Sims video at this point, so give me some grace. It also seems that I used what little money we had to upgrade the house, and I mean the kids had been pretty annoying since they had very little to do, so more toys and some books are probably a good idea. But more importantly, Tibbert got his own bed, which was well deserved for being the cutest baby ever. With Iris not being ready to age up, I decided not to age up William yet. 2 toddlers at once always sounds annoying. So the family mostly spent their time working on tidying up their aspirations or their skills for the day, and by nighttime, I got burglared for the first time. And since Honora was pregnant, there was nothing she could do but watch as her very expensive windmill was stolen. Eventually, help did arrive, but they were useless and our windmill was forever lost. Way to let us down, Justin. Since it was also super early in the morning, I had Adelaide knit a cute little outfit for Patters, and after tearing up the books, William learned how to crawl, which is fantastic because the scoot thing infants do is bizarre, and like that, he tried to make a run for it. Is it really a proper Sims experience if your baby doesn't disappear to Narnia randomly? And Adelaide did finish Patter's outfit, but he was still sleeping, so she held a yard sale in the meantime just for him to decide to finally wake up naturally. Whatever, look at my bunny in his little outfit. With Honora about to pop, I also needed to meet another man and settled on Percival, a literal prince. But more importantly, infants can apparently nap with the animals. I hadn't really played with the animals before, so there was a ton of things Tibert taught me since we started the challenge. And I was actually worried about potentially losing Honora, so I gathered all the kids to finish up her aspiration as quickly as I could, and oh my god, it was so hard to have so many Sims getting to know each other at the same time. Thank goodness William interrupted Honora with his poopy butt, because that was way easier to deal with. Where I learned Iris was finally ready to age up, and while gathering the ingredients for a cake, we got another hatchable egg. I think I had literally only gotten 2 at this point, so I was so excited to see that damn egg. I also had to be strategic and make the kids a meal to protect our cake, because I just know one of those demon spawns would steal a piece, and I didn't have enough eggs to make a second one. And boom, the cake was safe. I'm just brilliant like that, man. So Iris became creative, and William was independent, with their makeovers definitely taking me forever, and they were both so freaking cute, and it was time to roll with William needing to avoid 4, 8, and 12, and Iris 9 and 19, which they both did. This definitely felt like too much good luck for me, so I was more stressed about Honora at this point, but sadly it was pretty late, so all the children went home. So why not focus on Iris and get her going on her aspiration? She needed to just get inspired before drawing 2 pictures, and after fixing the sink, Honora was able to start helping William go potty. Fortunately, Iris's aspiration was easy as hell, and I was already on the second part, which was to literally just play with toys and get her creativity skill up, and Adelaide decided that the perfect place to knit on was a dirty toilet while taking care of her business, and gotta love the efficiency, I guess. And while Adelaide was busy being victim to the firstborn curse, Iris and William were just having an absolute blast in the house. I would feel bad, but it is just a Sims thing at this point. But fear not, because Iris did at least work on getting her mental skill up to help Adelaide with the garden, while Nora spent some time trying to work on her redeveloped relationship fears. But I decided I didn't care anymore, so I knocked out some whims to get the 3,000 points we needed for the fertility trait, just to learn that teens can't get it. Makes sense, but also what the hell. So I had Nora dump him finally, only for her to become mortified super far away from the house. But she did make it back in time to hide in bed, and Iris was almost to level 4 in the mental skill, while catching us a ton of fish to make food out of. And since I couldn't give Nora the fertility trait, I settled for steel bladder instead. Adelaide finally completed her aspiration, and Iris got to level 4 in the mental skill, so I was going to send them both foraging, but Iris walked past a gorgeous man on the way, so I had her stop to meet him for her mom later. In my defense, Nora was still mortified, and Iris is just getting with the program. Oh yeah, and Beatrice stopped by to see her granddaughter, which was hilarious given Nora had just dumped her son. Adelaide was pretty tired, so she went to bed, but Iris would not leave Beatrice alone, and it was seriously cracking me up. And just like that, the baby was coming, and I guess Iris is just a chatty Cathy, because she would not shut up the whole time Nora was giving birth to another girl, Sylvia, named by Forrest and Rory. And like that, onto the rolls, which sadly Nora did not survive, but Sylvia was still kicking. I was worried about getting the game over screen as well, so I had Nora make the cake for Adelaide to age up, where she became creative and got the friend of the world aspiration. After a quick makeover, it was time to roll and avoid the number 7, which fortunately she did. And it was time for Nora to kick the bucket, but I did try to plead for her, and of course Grim didn't give a damn, so into the garden she went. I was going to have Adelaide mourn, but there was a super cute man walking by, so she chased after him instead, and because we did the social butterfly aspiration with her, she was befriending him crazy fast, and they were flirting in no time. Sylvia was making it kind of difficult though, because Adelaide wouldn't stop walking off to care for her. At least Grim felt bad enough to tend to the garden for me, giving her time to smooch up Dante, but he walked off before I could seal the deal with him. So after taking care of Sylvia and William for a bit, she invited Dante over and they got to business, but she still wasn't pregnant, so he had to stay the night since William desperately needed a bath. And of course, as soon as I was back to Dante, Sylvia was screaming her head off, but after 3 tries, Adelaide was finally pregnant. I also decided to move the family to a bigger lot, but literally in the same house, since businesses and hobbies was something I was interested in doing someday, and we would need more space and money to do that. Oh, but we did end up with 2 rabbits now, and Iris was bugged out and refusing to eat for some reason. But whatever, we pushed on, and she inherited the firstborn syndrome now that Adelaide was our matriarch and was busy bonding with the bees. Also, Trevor, the hot guy that Iris found for us earlier, wanted to come over, so I wasted no time in getting to know him, but he hated Adelaide with a passion and he stomped off. Who cares though, because Sylvia was ready to age up, becoming Sunny, which inspired her makeover, and sadly, she didn't survive her role, so next to her mama she goes. And again, there was a cute guy nearby, so Adelaide had no time to mourn, not to mention the house was was still in financial ruin, and Adelaide had no cooking skill to make better goods. At least William was independent and could go potty by himself, but Iris was going to need an instrument for her aspiration, so I decided it was time to start trying out some sleep replacements since Adelaide had a lot of points to use up. And after cooking all day and night, Iris had plenty of items to sell off for the day when Adelaide realized she was pregnant before sitting down to work on her knitting skill. Sadly, pretty much all of the money we made for the day went to buying Iris a violin, but after Honora bit the dust so early, I needed Iris to be ready in case Adelaide got wrecked too. But I also wanted Iris to spend time befriending the birds, and so I was hoping I would luck out and get one of the treats for the golden or evil chickens, but also to help us garden as the bugs were really a problem this summer. And oh my god, Adelaide made a ridiculous amount of food again, especially pumpkin bread since it was our big ticket item. I was getting a little worried about our flower supply, so I sent Iris foraging just for her to not find any seeds. But whatever, because the household was clawing their way through the 10,000 simoleons I needed in order to get the lot trait for better fertility. And the next day it was time to age up William, who became adventurous only for him to roll a 9 and bite the dust. And while I was trying to plead for him, Sleepy naturally made it about him, and again, Grim told me to kick rocks. So the 2 became 3 in the garden. Iris needed to lock the fuck in on her aspiration, and Adelaide got the mastery perk, a dash of spice, which improved the quality of all her food. And at night, Iris completed her aspiration, making her ready to age up. Since Adelaide was sleeping, I had her start a yard sale in the meantime, and I had also started to stockpile some food for fall since you find less items while foraging until spring, and I didn't want to run into a food shortage. And I guess I just forgot that Iris was ready to age up because I sent her fishing the next morning so she could harvest the garden instead of just making her a cake. And in the middle of the night, Adelaide went into labor where she had a boy named Pascal, named by Moody French Fry, with both Adelaide and Pascal surviving their roles, thank goodness. Since it was about 30 in the morning, Adelaide was mostly cooking, and I learned that I had decided to wait on aging Iris up so she'd have more time as a teen in case anything did happen to Adelaide. I'm going to guess this because I'm using the fertility rates from the Ultimate Decades, and the teens have the highest chance of getting pregnant at 30%. At least the children can make candles, adding yet another burden for Iris to take on. There was also no more flour in the house, so without any bread to make, our yard sales were going to be less profitable. But that's okay, because I needed Adelaide to get pregnant, and since Finn decided to be somewhere in the neighborhood, Adelaide invited over Aldous instead, where he kicked over my trash can right away. I am really amused by how often my matriarch seems to get steamy with men, for all of the neighborhood to see, by the way. But Adelaide got that first kiss in, and after a few tries, she was pregnant. And after spending the night waking up Adelaide nonstop, Pascal was finally ready to age up, becoming a calm infant. So after some time in Cass, he was just so adorable, and even better, he survived his role, so he was also alive. Iris went hunting, bringing back a pigeon, a rabbit, and duck, before ending up right back at the selling table. And we did get pretty close to 8,000 simoleons, but I decided to expand the yard, which cost 2,000-ish. There were a lot of choices that I made here that I ended up regretting later, but for now, there's a massive garden, a debug pond, and a space for livestock. I also decided that Adelaide needed her own thing, as she's not a Nora, and I hadn't played with Crystal Creations yet, so I not have Adelaide get into making jewelry. It actually didn't take too long to make our first necklace, which would give us a boost to finding gems while we did stuff around the house once charged, but the girls both needed to keep selling food, as it's actually really expensive to make jewelry even when you have the gems and metal already. Also, it was genuinely too much for Adelaide to tend to everything by herself, so it was time for Iris to become a teen whether I was ready or not, where she became an animal enthusiast, so why not go with the country caretaker aspiration? And wow, even after our makeover, she literally looks the same. I've never had a teen look so much like their child self before. And having avoided 7, she survived her role, and since I was saving up points with Adelaide, Iris's points went into sleep replacements, so that both the girls could keep up with Pascal and the house while hunting, cooking, crafting, and selling everything. And just for me to realize Pascal had more than enough milestones to age up into a silly toddler. And with his makeover done, he just had to avoid 4, 8, and 12, which he did. But I was also starting to get notifications that my goats were getting old, which sucked, because Tibbert and the goats were all that were left from day 1 of the challenge. And for the next couple of sim days, everyone really locked in on getting their skills and the household funds up until Adelaide went into labor giving birth to Giselle, named by Katie Maypole, with both of the girls surviving their dice roll and Pascal becoming an outgoing child. And oh my god, Dante's good looks were really kicking in, because look at him. He also did survive his role, and since he was a social butterfly, I added him to the same club Adelaide was in as a child, since befriending 3 kids took forever last time. He was literally breezing through his aspiration, already knocking out the first part. While Iris was working on selling all of the food that she had made the day before, she got us up to 10,000 for the lot trait, making us dirt poor again, but at least we still had things left to sell, allowing me to get a goat from the free range mod, which was a little bit bittersweet considering Grumpy and Sleepy had just passed on. And there was literally only money for the goat, so enjoy that empty field. I was feeling pretty stir crazy at this point, so I decided that Adelaide was going on a date with Finn, where they managed to beat every couple ever to the only bench on the lot. And despite them being strangers at the start of the date, Adelaide is insanely good at making friends thanks to completing her child aspiration. So it didn't take long for the two to cozy up, and after a seductive dance, Finn was ready for a first kiss. I almost did forget to have them go home and make use of our new lot trait, only for the two not to be willing to woohoo. Turns out, when I rearranged things, I was an idiot and pushed one of the beds into the wall. But after a few attempts, Adelaide still wasn't pregnant and Finn dipped, so it was time to age up Giselle finally, becoming Sunny, and after a quick makeover, she did fortunately survive her dice roll, so our luck was at least turning around. Also, despite some of our chickens becoming elders, they were also giving us hatchable eggs regularly now, so there was at least new chicks to take their place. And while doing the morning chores, I learned the goat I got can literally walk off to Narnia, and it kept weirdly glitching into the floor while walking, and things would not stop breaking all day. So it was pretty late, and Adelaide still had no time to invite over Finn or help Giselle with her milestones. But I guess Finn really enjoyed himself yesterday because he showed up on his own. But Adelaide still wasn't getting pregnant, so while Iris worked with Giselle, Adelaide moved on to Micah, and the two did really hit it off, but of course he just decided to walk off suddenly, so Adelaide wandered back to the house tired and defeated, and just for Micah to be at our yard sale now, Sims 4 things. And after rolling around in the sheets, Adelaide was finally pregnant again. Oh yeah, and I hated the mod for the goat, so I got rid of it. That mod sucked. So with the money back from the busted goat and the fencing that failed to contain him, I was able to expand the house, allowing for a nectar room, a nursery, and a proper bedroom, while still being able to afford 2 new goats, Bashful and Sneezy. Adelaide had also managed to smoosh Trevor by giving him things until he decided he liked us, which I was so happy about because he's literally so hot, and now we had him and Finn on our back burner. But Tippert became an elder, which broke my heart, as he's all that remains of our humble beginnings. Also, I guess Giselle became a toddler, and I didn't film it, but she's cute on her rocking horse. And the bees found us some jet and hematite, which when made into jewelry will protect Sims from death, mostly Adelaide, as everyone else can face their fate. Speaking of fates, Pascal completed his aspiration, and it was time for him to become a romantic teen, and Pascal is literally one of the most stunning male children I have ever had, maybe even the most. So, of course, I went with the serial romantic for him, and I was so stressed about his role, but at least he survived. Our chickens were a little bit of a different story though. They had stopped giving us hatchable eggs, so I was really happy when our rabbit gave us a flirty treat. But whatever, onto the town's new heartthrob, who wasted no time in getting to know Adela, and for some reason, Pascal would not stop being mean to her, so she hated him, and disappeared in the time it took me to check on Giselle. So he wasn't much of a Casanova, I guess, so might as well make us some money by having a yard sale. Also, Rocky Road was becoming an elder, so I decided to buy a bunch of rabbits, and I do gotta say, as cute as this mod is, it did end up horribly glitching out the rabbits. So I do advise against it, but yeah, Adela showed up, and I learned that she was a hot-headed and mean sim, which is why she was so hard to befriend. But Pascal gave adorable himbo vibes to me, so I decided he would be persistent in his pursuit, leading to his first date with her. And also, it's the same place as Grandma had her first date, so that was adorable to me. And I guess his himbo charmed work because the two shared their first kiss and got busy in the bush. I was really hoping Adela would get pregnant from the risky woohoo, by the way. And back at home, Adelaide was really struggling with her pregnancy this time around, so she was still not done with any of her jewelry, and just as she did feel good enough to work on it, there was a thunderstorm, where she totally left her baby behind, by the way. So the family spent a chill night in their new living space, and I got steel bladder for Adelaide since I forgot that she was a teen and couldn't get the fertility treat yet. Speaking of fertility, the flirty treat worked, and we had 2 hatchable eggs in the morning. I was so excited because we were down to 3 old as hell chickens, and Adelaide was still miserable, so everything was pretty much left up to Iris and Pascal, but I hoped getting her a really fancy bed would help her out. Adela also showed up to buy her stuff, which was perfect because Pascal needed a partner for his aspiration, and she said yes, thankfully. So cute that he got the Ice Queen to warm up to him in the end. The house was also dirty enough to get dust bunnies again, and this time I wanted to try and befriend them so that they'd stick around once I cleaned up. I also named him Paddington, so I was already forming a really strong attachment to some dust. And while Adelaide was finally feeling better, there was another thunderstorm, so I had her try out making some nectar. And while I hadn't mentioned her much, Giselle also had gotten all her skills to level 3, so she was ready to age up and she became a cat lover, which is too perfect for Tipper. I had to wait for Pascal to return before I gave her a makeover, and so she asked Paddington to search for stuff, and he came back with a freaking sword. And Adelaide finally popped, giving birth to twins John and Joan, named by Cat Cat. So it was time for all of their roles, and I was happy to have the jewelry. Fortunately, all of their roles went well, and no one needed it. I also decided pretty early on that Mom only had to roll once for births at this point, but this does change later in the challenge. And with Pascal back, Giselle could finally get a makeover, and I think she turned out pretty cute. I really like that her hair was still edgy while sticking to a medieval-ish style, and her good luck continued because she also survived her role. So with all that good luck, Adelaide invited over Finn for a little late night fun, which fortunately worked this time. And oh my god guys, look at Tipper finally getting the love he deserves. Also, Pascal had met a new girl, Anya, and while the two were hitting it off, he did something that made her mad. I think Pascal loves to pull pranks, but things were working out pretty well, and despite their bad compatibility, they had a pretty fantastic date that of course ended in a risky woohoo. I was really hoping for a love child in Pascal's future still. Also, I was painfully learning that Crystal Creations is super buggy, with it saying we had gems, taking my money, and then Adelaide crafting nothing because we didn't actually have the gem. But I was stubborn and wanted to persist since we had been doing the Home Chef hustle thing for so long, and when Crystal Creations does work, it's insanely overpowered. At least the twins were ready to age up, with Joan becoming calm and John cautious, and I noticed that Joan looked nothing like her brother. They did both survive their roles as well, so I was pretty nervous about taking care of two infants, especially since Iris was busy making a million flirty treats and trying to feed them to the chickens, since we had like 4 roosters and 1 hen at this point, and they kept glitching out and just wasting the treat. It was a rough day for glitches, man. Giselle did find a gem-shaped seed though, so I had Adelaide brave the thunderstorm to plant it, but like I said earlier, there's a lot about the lot that I regretted, so I eventually made a new one, and spent forever on the lot by the way, because I finally learned how to terraform and went a little overboard. But it looks sick, and there was only a slight difference in the cost from our old lot since it was mostly debug landscaping. Grandpa Cedric even stopped by, which was cute, but today was about locking in, earning some much needed money, and getting aspirations completed. So Iris was working on her garden, Giselle was tending the table, and Adelaide had to bond with the bees again because they were new boxes, leaving Pascal to somewhat look after the twins and animals, but he was also needing to meet more Sims, so I had him start a gathering of other teens, where he was getting along pretty well with Hilda. A side note, she's still one of my favorite Sims from my Ultimate Decade save, and oh my god, Giselle was rebelling against the selling table because every time I checked on her, she was running away. Iris was at least free from it and running all over the Bramblewood for collectibles and knocking out another part of her aspiration and trying to befriend the birds in the area because I still wanted the damn golden treat. And just for a thunderstorm to ruin everything, so now there was a ton of Sims in the tiny Baker cottage, and Tibbert was again living it up with Giselle on the couch. I was really loving their bond and that he was getting all this extra attention in his final years, and while Adelaide was busy with the twins, Pascal had moved on to Mei Ling, becoming such good friends with her that they kissed pretty quickly and awkwardly through a curtain. By then, I had enough of the house being this full and ended the gathering, but Pascal at least was breezing through the serial romantic aspiration and already had Hilda lined up, and I decided that he was going to go both ways since he was already close to a lot of Sims, which would help knock out his time kisses relatively quick. The next morning, it was time to focus on poor neglected Giselle and also free her from the selling table. So she got the kids together in the town square and they spent quite a bit of time playing together, getting her to the next part of her milestone, which involved a lot of typing. So I had her and Iris go to the library since Iris had also gotten the ability to write a cooking book and that we could pass down later. But surprise, it was glitched. Shocking. So I brought Pascal along to start working on his things, where Hilda taught me that we could bring back past flings to help knock out the 10 kisses. And of course, we couldn't skip out on the risky woohoo with Hilda before inviting the other girls one by one. Oh, and of course, Giselle was crushing her thing as well, and while she did finish her typing, her poor needs interrupted Pascal and Anya. At least John was only 1 milestone away from aging up, and Joan was a little bit behind, but only because she didn't crap herself like her brother. Pascal also invited over Jeremiah because I was hoping to have them kiss, and I seriously spent so long trying to boost their relationship, only to remember that Jeremiah was Adelaide's father. My bad. Whatever though, and on to Omari, who was definitely not related to Pascal, and he was actually pretty easy. But Aldous was another hot-headed Sim and was really making Pascal work for the relationship. And while I was struggling to keep up with everybody in the household, I was still really hoping that Adelaide would have twins. And oh my god, the game would not stop glitching out because Joan was no longer getting any milestones no matter what I did, and I guess Adelaide was over it because she tried to leave Joan outside, which must have whipped her into shape because her milestones came flying in and now we were just waiting on John. But he would have to wait because Pascal had been really successful hunting and everyone was super tired except for Adelaide. But I guess John was determined not to be left behind and got his last milestone on his own, so John became inquisitive and Joan became wild. I also apparently didn't raise them that well because they were just happy infants. But they both turned out so flipping cute, and I remembered to fix John's eyes with both of them surviving the rolls. And with all the hard work the family put in over the past few days, I was able to build a shed, which also became Pascal's room. Since he had spent so much time getting around, I thought he might like his own space, and I added Hildegard von Kitten to the family as I wanted Tippert to start his own legacy. Everyone was really just getting busy in this house, I swear. Oh yeah, and Serenity here was the semi-maid to move in Hildegard, so I was super happy that her and Pascal were hitting it off, even having their first kiss. And even better, when Pascal got home, Aldous was at our yard sale, and they were actually getting along this time, just for him to abruptly leave. Since 4 is so annoying sometimes. And while John was being absolutely precious, and Joan was literally destroying the house, so I was quickly developing favorites here. Speaking of favorites, I was not giving up on Trevor and started to have Adelaide work on improving their relationship. And Iris, my favorite child so far, finally had a perfect crop for her aspiration, but she would have to wait for it to be ready to harvest. With Adelaide finally befriending Trevor, she tried to flirt with him just to give him the ick. So while Adelaide wasn't going to give up on him, it was better just to let him leave and hope that things turned out better next time, where I also got the notification that Hildegard was expecting, so it made me less sad about Tippert getting old. And since we moved into a new house, we had lost Paddington, but it was finally dirty enough for Paddington II to appear. So Iris quickly started working on befriending him, and Adelaide managed to get Joan to potty on her own. Having twins was totally kicking my butt, by the way. So I was hoping that our lot trait didn't work this time around, and it was time to find out because she went into labor, and it was twins, of course, Vincent and Reynard, named by Vigneux and Marigold. And sadly, they both did survive, so I was a little stressed out at this point, especially since the household would quickly be maxed out with all the Sims and cats since Hildegard is expecting. So for once, I was a bit happy that Adelaide didn't know any men besides Trevor. We were also broke, so Adelaide was seriously needing to lock in on jewelry with her unexpected downtime. At least John could watch Joan to learn his potty skill, since Pascal was busy hunting and Iris was busy tending to the animals and cooking. And of course, the aspiration grind to help make some room in the house. Fortunately, Aldous decided to be on board today with the kiss because none of our smaller children were on board with anything. Though, to be fair, Pascal was teasing Joan a ton, so I'm not surprised she had a total meltdown. Hildegard also went into labor finally, and it was my first time having them give birth, so I felt kind of bad that Hildegard was just suffering around the house, but then my game crashed, womp womp. But Julian showed up, probably to visit his kids, but I decided he was here for Pascal. So the two were chatting, with my first kittens, Troy and Artemis, finally being born, and they were literally carbon copies of their mom. So with a full house, it was time to give Trevor the quality time that he clearly needed to actually be into Adelaide, and I don't know where Julian went, but Micah was now in Pascal's gaze, and though it was a very awkward encounter, so apparently my adorable himbo is no romantic savant. Luckily though, Adelaide had just about maxed out her friendship with Trevor before needing to tend to her babies and herself, and for once Giselle actually locked in at the selling table, and Iris had made a ton of flirty treats to give to all of our chickens at once. They were mostly elders, so again, the chicken apocalypse was still a real concern, and literally with a maxed out friendship, Trevor was still rejecting Adelaide. So I decided, when all else fails, schmoozing was the way to go and started giving him romantic gifts. And he was loving being showered in begonias, so I guess building a proper connection was not the right move, only for him to get upset with the gem I offered. He's lucky he's too attractive for an unfortunate pool ladder accident, and the flowers were fortunately salvaging my mistake. But our babies were ready to age up, with Reynard being wiggly and Vincent sensitive. Unfortunately, our cutie patooties survived their roles, but somehow Reynard ended up off lot for some reason after his makeover, and Vincent decided he was going to be a snuggly sleeper. I was a bit worried about my sanity at this point, but at least John and Joan were doing pretty good on their skills despite me ignoring them since they had aged up. Also, since the next Finchwick fair was going to involve wool, Iris got a mini sheep named Coco. I literally don't remember Coco, by the way, so I've got a sense of impending doom when it comes to her. But whatever, cause I was bound and determined to use Trevor as the next donor, and Iris got us 4 hatchable eggs from all her flirty treats the day before. And of course, Trevor was pretty mad that we were flirting with him yet again. I'm pretty sure this is just Lovestruck kicking my ass repeatedly, by the way, so its quirky charm had really worn off, and it's one of my least favorite packs to date, though maybe it can redeem itself later in my Ultimate Decades challenge. And to add insult to injury, Trevor decided to let us know he was unsatisfied with our relationship after literally spending 2 wholesome days rejecting Adelaide and unless she was giving him a gift. But I'm more annoying and Adelaide finally got that damn kiss and they headed off for some more privacy, which did get her pregnant, and the cowplant berry Giselle fished up forever ago was finally full grown and I named it Catalina. But with Pascal needing to kiss another sim or two and Adelaide knowing no more men, it was time to go to the bandit camp Trevor lived at because it was full of sims to meet. With Trevor here though, I thought it was best that Adelaide only say her quick hellos, especially since Han here was picking up what Pascal was putting down in no time and became his 10th kiss, so that just left Pascal's charisma skill to work on for now. And with seriously way too many sims in the house, I was locking in on our youngest kids, but oh my god, Vincent and Reynard were interrupting Adelaide's queue with their milestones and non-stop needs. At least the toddlers remained pretty self-sufficient, or I probably would have rage quit here. Iris had finished her chores though and could start helping out with the littles' needs. She is truly the silent powerhouse in this family, by the way. Between her cooking, crafting, gardening, and animal care, she was the only reason there was money, but every time I was losing my mind, Iris came flying in on her own to lend a hand, which allowed us to finally have time to age up Giselle since she had completed her aspiration, where she became romantically reserved, and I really liked her less girly style, so I tried my best to keep her that way. I guess I also forgot to roll for her, but in my defense, I was trying to save the cake for the toddlers as they were close to aging up, so I was a little distracted. At least Giselle and Iris had worked so hard in the past sim week that I was able to add a bedroom onto the shed, and Iris celebrated her work by stealing a slice of the cake that I had hidden. Speaking of cake, Catalina was also trying to steal a bite, leading us into winter, and with everything that had gone on in the fall and how much Iris held the family together, I really started to doubt that she would have time to finish her aspiration before aging up naturally. At least it wouldn't cost us $10,000, as that cost is only to age up early, but it still felt like I neglected our strongest sim. Also, the toddlers were ready to age up, but there wasn't enough eggs to make a cake, so everyone had to go foraging for some. So with everyone gone, Adelaide had to focus on making food to sell because shocker, the family was broke again. And I had to send the kids foraging so many times that Adelaide even got to work on her jewelry some more. It took so long in fact that the coop had more eggs in it, and I finally remembered to roll for Giselle, where she did survive. And Joan became a bookworm and John a child of the ocean, and oh my god, they were both so flipping cute, but my goodness, they looked nothing alike. At least they survived their roles though. They also had new aspirations, Whiz Kid and Slumber Party Animal, which I genuinely doubted we would be able to complete, but I was looking forward to the challenge. With Iris and Pascal both potentially leaving soon, I was really worried about running out of food and money, so the teens really buckled down on foraging and cooking, while Joan was working on her mental skill to plant the garden and John was tending to the table. And of course, there was a financial setback with John and Joan's aspirations, as the slumber party and chess table were going to cost us quite a bit of money. Joan also needed an adult to read to her for her aspiration, and there was none in the lot, so I kind of realized it was worse having the matriarch remain a teen than dealing with a lower fertility chance. And even worse was that Adelaide wasn't very far into her aspiration yet, so I was starting to feel like Joan was going to be the first to cost us $10,000 to age up early. Vincent and Reynard were also pretty close to aging up, and again I was short on those damn eggs. I wasn't kidding in the beginning when I said eggs were literally liquid gold in this challenge, and in my case, they were the biggest roadblock. Fortunately, Joan did find us some eggs while foraging, and the boys were able to have their birthdays, with Vincent becoming clingy and Reynard a charmer. I also got to see how much our bills would cost after our recent expansion, and there was no way that the household was going to be able to pay $1,300 regularly, so I was panicking a little here, and I couldn't catch a break because after a quick makeover and cast, Reynard failed his dice roll, and Grim also wasn't interested in sparing him. So I decided to pivot and focus on Pascal since he needed to complete his dates for his aspiration, but also because the reward for having a gold date is worth a ton of money. So he and Serenity met at the tavern, and Serenity was genuinely the first girl to actually like Pascal without rejecting him a million times. So they shared their first kiss and a not so romantic romp, but as much as I was loving him and Serenity together, the goal was money, so he continued his hot streak with Micah and Han. His aspiration also glitched out here because he had previously completed the have 8 romantic partners just to lose it when I had earned gold on 3 dates. I honestly just decided to ignore it and move him out, and he took Artemis and Hildegard with him so we would have more room in the house, where I decided that Serenity and him were also meant to be since they got along so well. So they're now partnered up in my Ultimate Decade save with all of their cats. And it was time to work on Iris befriending an animal, while Adelaide worked on her charisma skill for her aspirations. At least with the garden planted, the only thing Vincent needed help with was earning his first potty skill, and Giselle maxed out her cooking skill while making items for John to sell, which allowed me to buy a ton of skill building items for our Sims and decorate the house a bit nicer, but also put us right back into poverty. But John was losing his mind at the selling table, so I had him play some chess with Joan, where she developed the fear of being inferior since he was kicking her butt so bad. The next morning, Beatrice walked by, and I realized she was not only an adult, but related to us, so I tried to have her read to Joan in hopes that it would complete that step of her aspiration, but you can't have a child ask an adult for some reason. So my brilliant plan quickly went up in smoke, and then just to add on to the frustration with the game being dumb, Joan pulled out her tooth and turned into a black void, sending me all the way back to when Pascal moved out. At least not too much changed for the day, except the slumber party decided to work this time around, which I'd love to tell you about, but we can thank my old editing style for no info there. But at least we got some money for it being such a great slumber party. Unfortunately, that wasn't quite enough money for our bills, and with the stereo out from the party, Iris was only interested in getting down in the kitchen, and Adelaide was super bummed from losing Reynard, which ended up biting me in the butt super hard. Apparently, if Sims are in a bad mood, they'll botch every attempt to make jewelry, so we were not only losing super valuable gems, but also the money that goes into making the pieces. Iris was at least crushing it once she stopped dancing, befriending the bunnies to help us with the garden, and Giselle was starting to finally catch some fish for her aspiration, which gave me an idea to start decorating the house with what the children had collected. And unknowingly, it was also part of Giselle's aspiration, so I wish I would have thought about it like 5 seconds later. But with all the actual gameplay I was doing, I had at least learned about aspiration rewards being pretty insane. In particular, the moodlet solver, which I used to help Adelaide out because she was being useless at making jewelry, and it was also going to slow her progress on her charisma skill. But it just ended up not being enough to complete her aspiration before she gave birth, and I didn't want to waste days with Adelaide not being pregnant, so she invited over Tobias to start working on their relationship. Before they could even talk, she went into labor, giving birth to Genevieve and Elias, named by I really don't know. And sadly, Genevieve did not survive her role, which luckily didn't bother Adelaide too much, so she was still able to get to know Tobias after. It sounds terrible to say, but the show must go on in this house, and while it was going pretty good between the two, John's terrible violin skills were making Tobias tense, and he was starting to reject Adelaide a ton. But once I banished John to the chicken coops, Adelaide was able to smooth things over with Tobias and ended up pregnant. So back into the aspiration of money grinds, with a stronger emphasis on making sure we could help the kids along, while also allowing the family to eventually own a small business someday. I was also struggling with the glitch in the game where my mailbox was not working, mostly due to the CC being broken, but still, it was an issue for a hot minute, and I was really worried because I had planned to sell the gifts from the fathers in order for us to pay our bills. Also, Giselle was so exciting for me because catching all the fish in the game takes time, and I've never been a gameplay person for The Sims 4. So, in hopes of catching more fish, I had her start experimenting with different bait, and Adelaide was turning our garbage gems into seeds for more crystal trees, because basically, if you want to harvest the good stuff, you need to evolve the trees, and that was going to take us a while. When out of nowhere, to prepare the dust, losing my children was whatever, but losing my cat was awful, and this stupid game doesn't even allow me to plead, challenge Grimm, or extend their life without the treats that I didn't have access to. Deborah's death also made Troy gloomy, and it's pretty cool that the pets have some concept of personal growth and hardship within the game. At least the cat died before the slumber party started, but I had forgotten about John holding the chickens hostage with his violin skills, so he was feeling like absolute garbage. But I had learned from last time, and Joan was also a host for the party, so she was going to have to carry her brother. And for some reason, marbles don't count as a game for all of the children to play, so I'm going to go ahead and criticize EA on this. If you're going to be greedy and charge thousands of dollars for DLC that you want to shove down the player's throat, at least spend time diligently making sure it's cohesive with existing content. Like, duh. Anyways, Catalina died a while ago. Pretty sure I haven't mentioned it yet, but Giselle did find a new cow plant berries, so Catalina 2.0 was on the way, and this time closer to the main part of the house. So maybe she'll survive this time. And back to glitches, with the kids doing things for the slumber party together, but not being checked off, and Giselle's aspiration was checking things off that she definitely hadn't done. But outside of that, the family was doing surprisingly well, with Vincent close to aging up, and even getting a visit from Reynard. Also, why is Adelaide choosing to beef with her baby from the great beyond? Do you really need to be strict with him, girl? Somehow the slumber party had succeeded, and John was done with his aspiration, and it was time to address the absolute plague of fears my children were developing. If fears and grief types came with life and death, and up until now, they weren't really an issue, but at least there was convenient potions in order for us to solve the fears themselves. But on to a new day, and I had sold most of the elderly chickens, so I was just pretty busy fighting with them to eat the treats and making more when they failed to do so. And while trying to do Vincent's birthday, I got a notification for Elias to age up as well, so Vincent became a child of the ocean and Elias a sensitive infant. So it was time for their makeovers and roles, which they both fortunately survived. I also had totally forgotten that Elias' dad was Trevor, and the genetics in this game kind of suck, but don't worry, he gets his melanin back someday. And Joan was really starting to struggle with her anger grief type, so much that I was actually worried about her perishing from it. Even worse is, for some reason, all of the available options to manage their grief are also not available to children, so that was dumb, and Joan was mostly left to white knuckle it, but that honestly mimics real life pretty well in my opinion. At least Vincent was breezing through the social butterfly aspiration since the gang was all still at the house and he was already insanely close to John, really just forcing me to abandon him at the selling table to work on everything else. And since everything was breaking in the house, I tried to see if the children interacting with the infants would help with milestones, but that more or less seemed to be a dud. While not entirely their fault, children being awful to play with is the theme of the day it seems. But at least I fixed our mailbox issues by using an in-game one, giving us enough money to age up John and Joan, with Joan getting practice makes perfect and John an art lover. So of course they were going to be my writer and painter after the quick makeovers and dice roll, which oh my god, I am so happy that they survived. Also, a side note, Joan almost looks identical to Honora, and it's so precious to still see her and her grandbabies. But Joan put us back in the poorhouse, so that was less cute, and she was banished to writing, with John helping Vincent to get his last milestone. We also had finished our first collection with the family, so I was one down and so many to go. But at least with Vincent becoming an independent toddler who survived his role as well, the family was set for some pretty smooth sailing on sticking to their aspirations, but no melanin for him just yet, and also Emily got vaporized in some sparklies. Apparently that's the game's form of CPS, but I'd actually never seen it before, so rip the only girl in our kids club. But I mean, Adelaide and Vincent both completed their aspirations, so at least my babies were okay. Sadly, Adelaide would have to wait till she gave birth, but Vincent at least got to become nosy, so back into Cass, where I got my most unique looking child yet. I'm not sure where his face comes from, given this is what his parents look like, but he survived his role and that's all that matters. While John and Joan were hard at work for the night, I was struggling with their fine emotion that came with the snowy escape pack. Basically, when you get this mood lit, they're able to surge emotion for whatever buff they'll need, but I hadn't learned that just yet. But at least I had learned about the aspiration potions because again, Adelaide was really sad and botching all of our expensive jewelry. So we at least had a handful of moodlet solvers, fear begons, and sleep replacements to carry us for now, but apparently Joan had other plans because she quickly put Vincent, John, and herself in a bad mood, blocking their progress on anything. So it was time to get out with Adelaide and Vincent, since she's a klepto and he needs to snoop on people for their secrets, which proved to be a little difficult for Adelaide since what she could swipe was limited in general, and even worse, I had blocked most of it with decor. And once I did find something, well...
This is inappropriate. Please stop. Oh, we got caught.
So I decided that Adelaide would keep Mia busy while Vincent was snooping, and just for Haru to be right behind him. At least he did learn some secrets about everyone in the Tanaka house before heading off to the Alair estate. And while Vincent was digging up dirt, a fire started nearby, so he had to rush over to save Cassandra. And I was starting to notice how shallow snooping for the secrets was. Not only did Sims not care if you were obviously up to no good, but the secrets were just random walls of text. Like Giselle's ripped pants, Mia seeing bears on the moon, Haru getting money from a player using Rosebud. None of these gave my Sims life, and sure I can blackmail Sims with random nonsense, but it would have been better to learn Giselle had maybe peed herself, or maybe that Zaviel had been cheating on his wife. Things that had definitely happened in my save and actually felt like potential gossip. And even when I could confront the Sims, the game glitched out and I couldn't actually get into the Balto house in order to talk to them. So on to Iris, who was going to age up today, but I still wanted to try the Finchwick Fair, since if you can win gold, you have a chance of getting a golden treat, plus another chance to possibly buy it at the nearby stalls and haggle to sell our goods at a higher price. With no luck in the stalls, I had to hope my wool would do well, and I was being bullied by literal children. Piss off, Esther. But the mayor did give us a Finchwick gift, or favor, or whatever, so not everyone is a flaming turd today. And I was hoping this meant he would do us a little favor as a judge, but unfortunately, Iris walked away with a participation trophy. So it was time to say goodbye to my girl and head back home, where Adelaide continued begging the bees for gems, Vincent was harassing Joan, Elias was being ignored, and John was painting, and Giselle was doing all of the chores, since the rivers were still frozen, until Adelaide went into labor giving birth to Lucius and Lunette, named by Bubblegum Pink. And while Lucius didn't survive his role, I was a moron and whisked away Lunette. So he gets to live for now, and Adelaide was finally able to age up into an adult, and while she did fail her role, I used one of the rings to protect her, which I decided to just delete since I was not risking yet another glitch. So on to the next donor, Logan, who Adelaide did have to spend some time with, but it didn't take long before he was smitten, and the two did the deed, which failed to get her pregnant, so Adelaide got the fertility trait before giving it another go. That did actually end up getting her pregnant. I I'd also finally realized that Trevor was a donor, and all of my children were blindingly white, so Elias finally got his melanin, and how cute did he turn out. But with Iris gone, I realized we also weren't friends with any of the animals anymore, so Adelaide drank a sleep replacement and got to work with them. Elias also found Lucius, who he hated, and Giselle decided she needed a rebellious phase while she was literally the only one holding the family finances together. But a blizzard started, so all of the family became trapped in the house.
What in the demonic heck is that, Elias? Girl, get out of the blizzard. No, John, why would you take that? Oh, Vincent is not doing well. What are we doing over here?
Elias decided to wander off in his chonies, and John decided it was the perfect time to fix our plumbing, and Giselle couldn't decide what part of the house she wanted to be in. At least Trevor was being a good dad and playing with his child. And once the blizzard was over, Giselle still had most of the food she had made earlier to sell, and Adelaide had found a chenillite, so I was hoping she wouldn't botch the jewelry this time and it could be saved for a fertility boost later. And Lucius was ready to age up, becoming a sunny infant that was really just melting my heart, and he did survive his role fortunately. So Giselle got to work with him since she still couldn't fish, but Catalina 2.0 was finally all grown and ready to terrorize my kids again. And with John finally losing his emotion surge, I was able to get him into a confident mood for his paintings. My goal was to decorate the house with them so my Sims could have better luck pleading with Grimm, just for John to be a turd and become inspired. And since I wasn't selling his paintings yet, he was keeping us in the poorhouse. Oh well, at least Elias was ready to age up, and while making him a cake, the family got an inheritance from the Life and Death Pack. I think it was just a tutorial to making a will, but free money. And Elias became a child at the island, and after his quick makeover and surviving his role, he was hostage to the selling table like all the kids before him. At least Adelaide befriended Mordecai, but Grimm was also taking my chickens, so you win some and you lose some, before the family completed the fossil collection as well, and I had learned that Giselle's mounted fish can give off the confident aura. I had also thought Adelaide died somehow without me noticing, but it was just a skillful sleep mastery perk, making her look like a ghost. As much as I do love leaving the house, it's been kind of hard with this many Sims, so I was super excited when Hilda walked by, as Vincent needed to blackmail some Sims, and past me was a loser who decided to be friendly and not extort Hilda. I'm going to guess it's because she's one of my favorite Sims in my Ultimate Decade save, and while Joan was finally over her writer's block, John was now blocked in his aspiration by needing to go to a museum, which doesn't exist in my save. Adelaide was also too busy turning worthless gems into seeds, so Giselle was helping Lucius with most of his milestones when Tipper came to visit and was reunited with his bestie. The next morning, most of the teens went hunting or foraging so that Giselle could continue making food to afford all of John's paintings. But Lucius had also gotten all of his milestones, becoming independent, thank goodness, and after some time in cast, he survived his role. But he got the good appetite quirk, so he wasn't quite perfect and would likely eat a lot of what little food we had. Then Adelaide apparently caught the eye of Liam, and he was wanting to get to know her. I think this is a love struck feature, but then he decided he was going to be a cheapskate, so we ignored that loser. And while this random townie was absolutely getting down in the kitchen, Paddington II was finally happy again, getting us a diamond. I also still had to blackmail Sim with Vincent, so why not go after your own mom? Giselle actually did pay up too, which was stupid, and got us an extra 100 simoleons. And since it was too cold for Adelaide to plant all of her gem seeds, she was stuck making bread for the day. At least all of the smaller children were pretty self-sufficient, while I was struggling to keep up with the older children, even with John being eaten by Catalina 2.0 and developing a fear from it. But I had realized that Adelaide was about to pop, and she didn't know any other men, so it was Cameron's time to shine. And the two hit it off really quick. Her childhood aspiration and a maxed out romance skill is just ridiculously overpowered. Vincent also decided he was going to cook with a fear of fire, so I was sweating bullets, but fortunately the house survived my idiot child, and Giselle finished writing a cooking skill book, which I kept for any future children, and then promptly forgot about because I have never used that thing. It is cool in theory though. Adelaide also got the In the Zone Mastery perk, which randomly let her work on her skills without her needs going down. Hands down the best perk in the game, especially with how annoying it is to tend to pregnant Sims. And Catalina 2.0 snagged yet another child. The next day was Winter's Day, and after some stress of not being able to make a family feast, the teens were able to hunt and forage for enough items to make a meal. And since Iris had shown up, I decided to also bring over Pascal, and while inviting him over, she went into labor, giving birth to Ulysses and Dorothea, named by Zero Gaming X. And fortunately, they had all survived the rolls, but both Pascal and Iris had decided to be no-shows to my fancy family dinner, but I still got kind of emotional seeing my kids all together. I'm definitely more of a builder or challenge type player, so I never get to see generations of Sims all together like this, and just for them to annoy me immediately because none of them cared about the grand meal I had spent the morning stressing to get ingredients for. At least Lucius liked his new siblings, and Cameron was ready to get down, and after 3 times she still wasn't pregnant. I even gave them a short break to tend to the children and complete Winter's Day for everyone, everyone before Adelaide and Cameron gave it another go, and while they were busy, Elias and John became best friends, so I got all the kids together for the next step. But while I was doing that, Cameron left and Adelaide was still barren, so I decided it was time to shine for Liam, the cheap weirdo from before. The ground was also finally soft enough to plant our gem seeds, but the rivers were still too cold for Giselle to finish her aspiration, unfortunately. Joan was also finally at the step to publish her books, so I had her start selling them to a publisher, which made her a celebrity. Adelaide spent the day getting to know Liam, but he left before we could start romancing him when I noticed Cameron was visiting our yard sale, so they were back in the sheets. Her kids' sheets, I might add, and gross. And still, Adelaide wasn't pregnant, so it was time for the Chenolite necklace to shine. So now, she had the necklace, the personality trait, and the lot trait, and she still wasn't getting pregnant. I even went into Cast to check that they could conceive, checked my mods, and nothing. Adelaide was still not getting pregnant. So at this point I was getting worried maybe the romance and pregnancy mod could make Sims sterile. So off to the doctor she went, and while she was gone, Joan got the fame quirk, which was basically a bad thing, where she had no control of her emotions and would randomly have intense negative emotional states. And when Adelaide returned, she had a clean bill of health down there, but I wasn't quite ready to retire my girl, so she had Liam come over again, and like Trevor, he was really not into us flirting with him, and I had to schmooze him with gifts. So while they were bonding, Vincent had finally become a good enough blacksmith to actually make something, Joan had gotten her first royalty payment, and John took care of the chickens. I'd also realized that I had not had my hens and roosters in the same coop, so we had no eggs, unfortunately. I don't know how long that was a thing, but my bad. And it was time to age up Dorothea, who'd become cautious, and Ulysses, who'd become sunny. And after some time in Cass, Ulysses failed his role, but I was having a hard enough time with Adelaide, so I used one of our necklaces to protect his life and Adelaide's emotions. And I guess the game really liked giving me the bird, because Adelaide went from cheerful and flirty to gloomy and romantically reserved, which maybe I should have taken as a hint, but I'm also annoying. So I kept trying the gifts route with Liam, and while it did work, he suddenly left and refused to come back, so Adelaide shifted back to Cameron, and still she wasn't pregnant after several more attempts. And it was time to retire our second matriarch in the challenge and let Giselle take over in the next part of the series. It sucks, but getting pregnant is the point at the end of the day, so it is what it is. Like I said at the start, this challenge is still ongoing, and there's a lot of babies to name, so be sure to drop your baby names in the comments and let me know if you had a favorite moment or sim in the challenge so far. For me, it's hard not to pick Iris. While she didn't always get shown off a lot, she was the backbone of the house once Adelaide took over as the matriarch, and man did she do it all. Anywho's, whether you're returning or you're new here, I hope you enjoyed my new style of content, and I'll be back with more sims and other games in general. Thanks so much for watching.